Come on, puppy. Let's go through the woods over here. It's such a nice day. Hey, what's up? Happy Saturday. Just getting things started here. My screen is kind of smudged up. Give me a sec, see if I can clean this off. It's just hard to see in the light. It's very sunny where I am. It's a beautiful day. Hey, Sheila. Nice to see you. I needed a little more time than usual to sort of get my head up about me today, but I feel way better having done so. But yeah, it's a perfect day here. There's like no clouds in the sky. It's about 72 degrees. It's like a miracle kind of day. We've had a few of these lately around here, which have been really nice. Hello, Gigi. Nice to see you. Hope everybody's having a very nice weekend. I got some good sleep last night, which felt amazing. Just out with the dog. Ruby, you want to say hi to everybody? I guess not. Maybe not. Little path in the woods next to a beautiful stream. It's always nice to be outdoors. Ruby's great. I just gave her a bath this morning, so she's very clean and fresh. Clean the place. You know, it feels good to get your place cleaned up. The next thing is to clean the car. The car is filthy. But one thing at a time. Thank you very much. Nice to see everybody else here. We sort of have a cozy, regular, steady audience now, which is nice. And I'm going to talk about some things today that are totally off the normal beaten path of what we talk about, just because I find it interesting. I hope you do too. If you're someone who doesn't, because I usually talk about politics exclusively, but this is going to be sort of a reflective type of discussion. And I think we can all benefit from something like this. I know I definitely enjoy and need to focus on these sort of things more often. But as a part of this new trading sort of mentorship I'm in, they have a whole section that's on psychology, and it's really good. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to even be for the markets. It could be for anything. So it has reminded me of some important things for me to be cognizant of. And I think other people, hey, Maz, how you doing? Yeah, that's funny, Evan, to say that. If you don't like it, move to Russia. Yeah, I hear a lot of people say that about criticism of America. But I kind of disagree because remember that there are always things that can be improved with any nation. And it's actually more patriotic to actually try to focus on things that need help than just to take off. Anybody can just leave. It's like a relationship, it's like just instead of doing the hard work to make it work out, you just kind of break up with somebody. That's not really a show of any kind of dedication. But there are plenty of things about the country, and I don't even know if that was what Evan was talking about, but I think there's so many things for us to be thankful about, those of us who are privileged to live here, because we do get a lot of benefits. We have a relative amount of freedom, although it's sort of being curtailed. We have a beautiful landscape. We have access to amazing infrastructure, although it's definitely needs some help as well. We have a lot of things that are sort of kind of on the precipice of being in big trouble, but there's a lot of good to be thankful for. For right now, we still have a relatively vibrant and stable political and economic system. But again, there are cracks. And so I think for people to point out those cracks and to discuss them and look at ways to try to make improvements, that's not unpatriotic. So I never like to hear that when somebody says, if you don't like it, move out. Usually those are people who are indoctrinated and don't understand the nature of the problems, or they probably would join in that criticism or looking for ways to improve it. So anyway, I don't get too far about I'm doing okay. I've had a weird last couple of days. I think this is going to sound weird to everybody because you probably don't deal with this. But one of the symptoms that my Gulf War stuff causes is my muscles and my body is it's like tight like concrete. It's really bad. My tendons and my muscles are just very tight and stiff and sore all the time. So if I take like 3 hours to stretch, just really slow breathing and stretching, I feel so much better. It's just hard to fit it in every day. That plus massage therapy or a hot bath, that kind of stuff. And a lot of times I skip that because I just want to do other stuff. I'm going to talk a lot about that kind of stuff today because I find it fascinating. I think all of us have patterns of behavior, and a lot of it isn't self-serving. I know for me it isn't. I'm going to talk about social media because I think it plays a big role in most people's day-to-day lives, or at least the phone itself, depending upon how we use it. And I can only speak for myself, but I think that I'm probably not unusual, especially for the crowd that's here. I'm probably on my phone way more than I should be. I'm on it on average, I think, something like 12 or 13 hours a day, some ridiculous amount of time. They have that system in the iPhone that tracks your screen time. And that's insane. I don't think any of us were ever meant to be on a device looking at a screen this frequently. So one of my personal goals is to do less of it. And it's easier said than done, right? I think the biggest thing that I've recognized about the phone and me is it's sort of a nice distraction. It's like grabbing a little chocolate, like a little sweet kind of thing. It's like a little mental diversion. And I think it comes back to dopamine. Dopamine is that sort of feel-good neurotransmitter along with serotonin. And, it kind of gives it a little escape slash dopamine. I know that when you're flipping through TikTok, that's the whole point, right? Instagram and TikTok are meant to be dopamine reinforcement mechanisms. That's why people are so frequently scrolling. So, yes, it's an easy pattern to fall into. And I think, like every other behavior pattern, you just have to decide you're not going to do it, and then you just don't do it. So the other thing I'm trying to do, just for the audience to know, I'm trying to do a little less. Sorry about that. I'm trying to have the lives be a little less long. I've had a lot of long lives that last like 5, 6, 7 hours. That's got to go. So I'm going to try to keep them to an hour and a half to 2 hours max, and then I can put time into other stuff. So I'm wondering if people are thinking to themselves, everyone has their thing. People have vices, gambling, maybe being on the phone like this. Some people are unfaithful in their marriages or have tough times being in a romantic relationship. That's more like me. Or whatever. Maybe you overeat, or you eat too many sweets, or you don't go to the gym as much, or don't move your body, or maybe you smoke or drink too much, or whatever the hell it is. Everyone seems to have something on that continuum, and those behavior patterns are kind of deeply entrenched, such that it's hard for us, for whatever reason, to break from them because we have a lot of discomfort around facing it. And I think the only way to deal with that stuff, like I said earlier, I think for me, I just have to make a decision to face it head on and just get on with it. It's hard to do because it's such a comfortable pattern, and it's hard to break into new behavior patterns. I think somebody said old habits die hard. I think that's a truism. There is somebody, I don't know if you heard about this, a guy, it's called Stoic or Stoicism, a guy named Marcus Aurelius. He has a lot of that kind of stuff, talking about like habits and practices and stuff like that. So, but they say if you do something new for 21 days or so, you can establish a new pattern of habit. So it's a lot. It's the interesting thing. I think we all try to take on so much when we try to turn a page. It's like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. The best thing for me is just to pick one. So maybe it's the stretching thing. Just do that more frequently or whatever. But anyway, this is funny. I'm going to read this. This is written by M.S. Piney to King Leonidas. Says, you can come to Mexico. We let in any kind of individuals, even from the U.S. Yeah, that's a slap in the face. It's funny. A lot of countries don't even want Americans now. It used to be relatively easy for Americans to repatriate to places. And there still are some countries, as long as you bring some money or something into the country, they're more amenable to having people there. But it's not like that. It's not like that in a lot of places now. So, but we can travel. You can get, I think, a visa for 90 or 180 days in most countries just to come check it out. And then I think the best bet is to marry somebody. And then you can apply for longer term citizenship. Or if you're somebody that can come into the country with money and employ people, you're much more likely to get a chance to stay longer than if you just come in and live off the place. Anyway, so what I want to talk about today, if it's okay, is the idea of struggle. We talked about these different personal things, and I think all of us struggle with something depending on how much time and we think about it, or how much anguish we put it causes us. I have a really close friend who died, who was someone I played a lot of golf with. And this is not to direct this to any one person on this live. So if you're somebody who is involved in this activity, it's not directed to you or make you feel guilty. But he was a guy who he was such a nice guy. And he's one of those guys that just everybody liked him. He made relationships with anyone and everyone. This guy was just like pure gold. He was a teacher. He taught he taught math in a very difficult part of the school system in the inner city, and just was really caring. Wanted to help the kids, get better lives and stuff. He was a musician, so he played guitar. I actually took some lessons from him, and I tried to help him with golf. I've been playing a little longer of that than he had, but he just absolutely loved it. And he had been a former drinker. He had drank, I think, like a case of beer every couple of days for years. But he was somebody who exercised and he ate pretty well. He didn't eat a lot of crap. But the one thing he couldn't stop doing was smoking. He smoked unfiltered Camel cigarettes, and he also vaped a lot. And unfortunately, the body can only take so much of the pulmonary pummeling of cigarettes. And so I was begging him for the longest time. And no, I didn't want to be a pain. You don't want anybody to nag you if you have a habit. But I would just say, hey, the other thing was he had saved up, I don't know, like $400,000 in his retirement account. And I also said, hey, Paul, you should enjoy some of that money. Because he was a very, very miserly kind of guy. He would ride his bike, he would play guitar or other instruments, really talented musician. But he didn't know, he never spent any of his money. He would make up I don't know, like a batch of soup with vegetables and stuff, and it would last him like 2 weeks. It would cost him like $12. And he always was very proud of himself for not spending any money. But he never got to really enjoy any of it. So he saved for years and years. And I'm sure his girlfriend who got his inheritance was happy that he did that. But still, we truly never know what's going to happen next. And that's his inheritance was happy that he did that. But still, we truly never know what's going to happen next. And so that was sad. And we had hoped he'd be able to recover to play golf again with us at least, or just to come out and join us. But I think after about 2 months after his stroke, he had a massive heart attack. They had him on life support at the hospital. Then he got COVID while he was in the hospital dealing with the heart attack. And he was catatonic, and his parents had to make the decision to take him off of life support, which was just bad all the way around. It's just so sad to see something that's preventative take somebody out. He was 66, and he probably would have lived to 96. His father is, I think, 94. So his father outlived his son, which is always sad. He has a brother but anyway, the way I met Paul was he was a member of the 12-step group. My mom's been in AA for forever. And so I've met a lot of people through those relationships, and started doing golf outings, or they have this thing called, it's like a group of guys that play golf. I got involved in that. And also they do some hiking on the weekends, like a men's breakfast and then a hike. So I really enjoy that kind of stuff. I don't have a huge social life, so it's good to plug into something. One of my big weaknesses, and this is normal for people like me, I isolate a lot, which doesn't make any sense because I enjoy being out around people. I enjoy this kind of thing. But I don't know. That's one of my challenges. And then, like I told you, I'm on social media way too much. I'm trying to curb that. I kind of gave up the drugs and alcohol a long time ago, which is nice. So I don't do any of that crap. But this Gulf War stuff has been kicking my ass. I mean, really kicking my ass. And I'm having a hard time. Like the first half of my day is just brutal. That's why I didn't get on earlier, because I just needed more time to get my shit together. It's no fun. But as they say, somebody says I'm breaking up really bad. Let me go back this way where the signal's probably better. Sorry about that. I forgot this is a bad stretch. Yeah, for anybody who's trying to quit smoking, I don't know what it is. I don't know which method works better. Some people go cold turkey. Some people have to do it with a medicate, like a patch or something like that. But I would say, and this is, who am I to give anybody advice, right? I'm not doing this, but I would just hope that anyone who has struggled with that, just put aside everything else in your life, even if it takes a month, and just do it, because it will kill most people at some point, whether it's throat cancer or lung cancer or what's it called, like fibrosis or something of the lungs, or emphysema. And again, like it is, nobody's here to tell anybody else what to do. It's just, loving yourself enough to kind of just make yourself do the right thing sometimes is very important. And then if the other thing is, it's the people around you too. Now, if people can't stand you, that's another deal. I'm just kidding. But, I don't know why we do these things to ourselves, just self-sabotage in so many ways. But the other thing I want to talk about is clarity. So I don't know if any of you are like this, but I remember Zig Ziglar. If you know Zig Ziglar, he was a motivational coach slash sales trainer guy out of Texas. Very nice man. I got to meet him a few times. Really liked him. He was very kind. He was a very committed Christian, which I'm not connected with that, but he was just a good person. He was always trying to help other people, which I liked about him. Anyway, he said something it reminded me a lot of this. He said, you know, people sort of cling to their habits. It's unfortunate that establishing new habits is so difficult. And his whole point was to try to help people establish new ones that would have them have more successful outcomes. So anyway, I don't know if any of you feel this way, but about clarity I was talking about. So one of the things he suggested, and other people do this too, they said without clarity, you really can't do anything else. You have to he said most people spend more time planning their annual vacation than they spend even planning their own life. And I don't know if you're like that. I mean, a lot of people, it's kind of hard. You kind of have to force yourself to face yourself in the mirror and kind of force yourself to say, okay, what do I like? What am I good at? What do I find meaningful? It's kind of it's uncomfortable because you kind of have to go through that whole spiel. I find it very uncomfortable. I'll say that, but it's so important. And for those of you who know me from doing this, here I am with Ruby. The thing that brings me the most joy is being around animals. That's what makes me feel the best inside. But for whatever reason, I've been worried about not being able to quote make money. Right? That's always the challenge if you work with animals. But there's always a way to do it. So that's really what I want to be with my next chapter. I want to find a way to integrate myself into that because that's what matters to me. And I think before we check out, we should all have a chance to do what matters to us, right? Because if you always put it off and put it off and put it off, when the quote time is right, the time's never right for anything, right? You just got to start doing it. So that's all my list of stuff too, is to figure that out. One of the things I thought about was, and that's if TikTok sticks around, but there are plenty of animal sanctuaries, animal rescue places that they always need more funding and more help because they're always on a shoestring budget. But things like TikTok, if you have a social media presence, either on YouTube or TikTok or both, you can then get more attention and then hopefully get more donations and stuff. So what I'd like to do, since I've put my toe in the water of this whole thing, and I'm by far, I need to learn a lot more. But hopefully I can get with somebody who knows it better than I do. I want to go help the ones who aren't taking advantage of that. God, I hate cars without mufflers. Oh, drives me crazy. Help them develop their presence so they can do more to help animals more. The other thing I'd love to see in our lifetime is the abolishment of factory farming. Right? I'm not naive to think that's going to happen, but I think that is one of the biggest stains on the legacy of the modern world is the food production system for animal agriculture. Okay, I guess they're not going anywhere. And I don't know how many of you have seen these videos. I'm sure people have seen the horrific videos of how the food production system works. And, all of the laws that protect animals like dogs and cats and quote unquote pets don't apply. All the welfare laws don't apply. So you can literally, do anything you want to a pig or a chicken for the most part, or a cow, and it's completely unregulated. I mean, to a point. But because they're farmed animals, quote unquote, they don't have any protections. But if you kick a dog or a cat, you'll get charged with abuse or animal cruelty to animals. And when I look at a dog or a cat, one of the things that I've done is go to farms and interact with pigs. And pigs are really cool. If you've never interacted with a pig, I 100% recommend it. I can't eat any pig products ever again. I just can't do it. They're so amazing. They're smart. They're playful and crazy. The things that they go through, the way that they're farmed, they're stuck in these concrete sheds They never see the light of day. The mother pigs are laid on their sides in what's called some kind of crate. It's like sewing crate or something. And they're like little baby machines. They keep impregnating them. They make them lay on their back and nurse the babies. It's a disgusting system. I mean, even for dairy. If you don't know this, cows don't just give milk naturally, just like human mothers don't. You have to be pregnant. So cows are forcibly impregnated, usually between 4 and 6 times during their short life. They have a 9 month gestation period, just like humans. So while they're pregnant, of course, their milk is available, so they get milked. And of course, after they give birth for a period of time. And what they do is they take the calf, and within a day or 24 hours of it being born, they take it from the mother. And it's heartbreaking if you see these scenes on film of the mother chasing after the little tractor or whatever. Some farms just take the calf and shoot it, just right in the head. Boom, done. Other farms, if they're trying to grow their stock, they will just keep the females to go through the same cycle, and then the male calves, the ones that aren't unalived, they go to veal whatever, and then the veal. I don't hear much about veal crates. Oh man, I could never eat veal. They stick these calves in these little sheds. They feed them a diet of this really bad substance that makes them anemic, and it makes their flesh turn all pale and sort of pinkish. And then when they get slaughtered really young, and it's just so some asshole can have veal scallopini or some shit. It's just tragic, man. The whole thing just makes me sick. Now, when it comes to traditional farming, I don't condemn all forms of animals products because some people don't have a choice. It's like they don't have the luxury of eating alternatives. But any sort of large scale organized animal agriculture, it's absolutely unforgivable. And the power that these companies have, if you don't know, is just unbelievable. They just have so much power in the political system. It's just unbelievable. I mean, it's more than APAC. You have better chance. Oh, somebody says there's a good movie called Okja, OKJA, like Oscar Kangaroo Juliet Alpha is. Yeah, Brenda says hunting for survival or raising your own is better than what? Yeah, better than the factory farming. In case Tigger gets taken down, where am I going to find? Okay, yeah, Matey just asked a good question. Not to shift gears too much because that again, because I love animals. That whole subject is near and dear. We'll put that on hold. Maybe asks, where am I going to go, or where are other people like me going to go if TikTok does indeed get shut down? I have talked to people who know more about the company ByteDance, which is the parent company of TikTok. It is a China-based corporation, and it does have other investors, but it's mostly owned by the Chinese government. And the rumor is they are not going to sell. In other words, the law that's just been passed says they either have to divest completely, meaning they have to sell off a majority share of the ownership to someone outside of China, or they're gonna prohibit the app to be available in North America, in the United States. So if you and I were to go to the App Store, it just wouldn't be there, or the Google Play Store. Sounds like a bullshit deal to me, and we all know why. It's nothing to do with China, obviously. But so my guess is that if ByteDance chooses not to sell, they're going to force it to shut down, which is just unthinkably horrible. How many people here are creators? I mean, I'm a small fish, obviously, but there are plenty of people that make their living off this, And there are a lot of good avenues for information to make it out to the public, as we know from our experience in the last 6 or 7 months. So it's really tragic. Again, all of these apps have different problems. So Instagram has its own issues. Mark Zuckerberg, I think, is one of the worst humans that's ever lived. He's like a cyborg or some shit. He's one of those sociopaths I like to talk about. So most people are going to go to YouTube, but again, YouTube's owned by Google. So you have Meta, which is Facebook basically, and they own Instagram. You have Google or Alphabet, which owns YouTube. They all have algorithms. They've kicked people off the platform consistently for putting out speech that's not desirable. And then you have Rumble. So Rumble and Telegram tend to be the places that most people land who talk about subjects that are quote unquote controversial. So that's what will happen with me. Now, I already have a Rumble channel. It's not very well developed. What I've been doing is just taking these TikTok lives, basically downloading them and re-uploading them to as is. No editing, no thumbnails, just throw them up there. Because I don't spend much time doing like prettying up the pig. Come on, Ruby, come on. So that's what it's probably going to be. So if you want to get there, the way you can find it right now, and my suggestion is for anybody, not just me, but if you want to follow people who may not be on TikTok anymore, they usually have a link in their bio. So I have one of those. It's called Linktree. It's just a little utility that people can use to be able to consolidate their other social media and give a little list to people. So you'll find on mine, if you go to my bio, it says Linktree Chip Barnes. If you're in the USA, there's a clickable link with a chain next to it. If you're outside the USA, the text that you need to type into your web browser is listed underneath my bio. My bio says truth seeker, animal/nature lover, peace not war. And underneath that is the text for the link tree. So that's how you get there. So yeah, Rumble is probably the freest platform that's out there now, and a lot of content creators are trying to move people over there. I don't know much about its live functions. Again, I've spent very little time sort of learning the intricacies, but I have a presence on all these apps. I have an Instagram page, but it's mostly something I do to dump stuff from TikTok on there. I very rarely make videos from Instagram. I don't like Instagram. It's got a lot of, bullshit posers like people with wealth and models and all this other garbage. I don't like that stuff. And then, YouTube has a lot of good content, but they've canceled Jackson Hinkle, Nick Fuentes, Sneeko, a lot of people that I don't like all their views, but I think they should not be deplatformed. I think Alex Jones is still deplatformed from YouTube. So Rumble and Telegram. A lot of people like Scott Ritter, I think most of his content is on Telegram. He has a Telegram channel, just like the same ones we've been getting updates from Gaza and stuff. Very similar. Somebody says BitChute is more free speech than Rumble. Yeah, it could be. I've not looked into the details. I don't have any presence on BitChute. It's spelled like a parachute, BitChute, CHUTE, BitChute. So yeah, this is all going to be new terrain as we go through this transition to the digital dystopia that I've been referring to. And so more and more people who are used to the more mainstream social media platforms are going to be more and more constrained as far as content and then, of course, with access. And who knows, maybe it'll be even more like the Chinese government where they totally just censor stuff entirely. It's really unfortunate. Anyway, so I want to get back to the subject, though, of the animal agriculture. If you're really somebody who has a strong constitution and you can take a lot of unpleasant visuals, which I can't even watch this, but it's called Earthlings. It's narrated by Joaquin Phoenix, the actor. And it goes over the entire hidden underbelly of the food production system. It's so heinous. It makes me sad. I think Gandhi said you can tell a lot about a nation by how they treat animals. And of course, the United States is not the only place to do it in a barbaric way, but I think China is actually worse. But still, it's very disheartening that people feel like they need to consume. And listen, I was used to it as a kid too. I'm not pointing my finger at anybody, but the fact that we've been conditioned socially to think that we need to have, a serving at breakfast, a serving at lunch, and a serving at dinner of some kind of meat or animal product. And it is a good source of dense protein, don't get me wrong. But I don't know about you, but I don't want to have a serving of cruelty every time I eat. And yes, in nature, we know that animals die because there's predators. And that's not abnormal. So it's not abnormal in its truest sense for there to be, death. But the way that it's done in terms of the way animals they come into life, the way they're treated, and then of course the way they die, it's a big horror show. And so it embarrasses me to be a human being with that kind of shit going on. It's just one of those things where you shake your head, you're like, how can this possibly be the standard practice? It's just unthinkably cruel. And again, I don't know if you believe in reincarnation, but I hope all those fuckers are reincarnated as a pig in a factory farming system. That would be some fucking karma right there, I think. And I have a lot of other karmic thoughts about different people, but I'm not going to go there. Anyway, I know we sort of talked about different stuff today than the usual. Sorry if my signal's not good. I was fully vegan for a while. If you don't know what vegan is somebody who doesn't consume any animal products, not just food, but clothing. Don't support circuses. If it's exploitative towards animals, you just don't. You try to not participate. Now there are arguments, by the way. Just and I'll tell you the rest of the story. I heard Ted Nugent, the rock and roll guy who's a big hunter. He said that for those of us who eat tofu, which is one of the standard dishes made from soybeans in the vegetarian and vegan community, he said that way more animals get killed growing crops for soybeans. Well, he's not off the mark in terms of a lot of animals being killed for farming. You have all sorts of animals like small critters. But here's the kicker: the animals that are raised for food production, like cows, pigs, sheep, chicken, whatever, they are fed plant-based stuff. They're vegetarians. Now, pigs are omnivores, but they feed them mostly plant-based stuff. So, if 70% of all the agriculture is raised to give to livestock, then there's way more animals being killed, not just the ones being slaughtered, but all the ones that are killed in that production. That's a silly ass argument. Ted Nugent's a fucking moron. Excuse my language. He's also a little bit crazy. Good guitar player, though. I appreciate that about him. So no, I'm what they call a near vegan. I probably eat 99% vegan, and then once in a while I have some, maybe a cheese pizza, or even recently. And I know this sounds a little crazy for someone who's vegan, but I've had some eggs, which I don't feel great about. But when I buy them, I just contacted a friend of mine who runs the VA Farms program. I just texted her today. They have like they have a hen, like a chicken coop, and they're local hens. They're treated great. They do yield eggs, and so I'm going to go buy some of those. And they don't even charge that much. They charge like $5 a dozen. And of course they're not. There's no pesticides or bullshit. The animals are not treated badly. And again, I kind of feel like that's not super exploitative, but there are vegans who would just completely have their jaw hit the ground. And this is part of the vegan community that I don't like. Because remember, most people who are vegans were former meat eaters or whatever. Most very few people grow up from birth to be vegans. And so when they finally do become vegan and they feel the outrage that I shared earlier about factory farming, all the other cruelty, they then require people to be held to a purity standard that's 100% or zero. I think that's bullshit. In fact, this is what I would say back to somebody who acts outraged. I would say, I tell you what, would you rather have me be fully vegan, 100%, or would you rather every person in the world eat the way that I am, for whatever percent that is? Think of how much suffering would be reduced if everybody ate that way. That's a fair thing to say to people. I've been to these animal rights conferences, which I think are interesting, but the people there, I mean, for example, if somebody were to wear a leather belt or leather shoes, which we know a lot of the stuff we get for belts and shoes are made out of leather from cows, they would march you out of the building. Like you'd be literally ridiculed. And I just don't believe in militancy and absolutism. Not that I want people to, just kind of, I guess, casually cut corners, but I think perfection is a bad standard to hold people to for anything. And again, getting back to this cancel culture bullshit that I've been talking about, I'm being held to a standard, single transgression, completely eliminated. I don't like that. I think that's a bullshit way to be. But that seems to be a lot of younger people nowadays. I mean, if they find one thing wrong with anybody, they're just completely they just completely turn on them and treat them like garbage. So anyway, I don't know. That's a shame. I absolutely abhor that. But there's a great video on YouTube that talks about a whole generation has been lost to cancel culture. And they have a very binary way of thinking. You're either all okay or you're completely worthless. Nothing in between. I just don't get that. So, yeah, I mean, again, so let's look at this. So in terms of meat production, so we all know that there are these big feedlots for cows. There are chicken sheds that are just unthinkably cruel with all these chickens crammed in, like 50,000 birds. It smells horrible. They breed them really quickly, so they grow too fast. A lot of times they break their own legs. It's just a shit show. But if somebody raises chickens in a humane way, or they raise cows on a field with grass, they treat them with dignity and respect, even pigs, outdoor pigs. I find that to still be difficult because I don't want to kill a pig. I think the most ethical way to do it is to go out in nature and hunt a boar, a wild boar, and not for sport where you just want to go out and shoot things. That's those people are way fucked up in my head. But if like I have a friend of mine growing up, I can't believe this shit. This is his entertainment. This is what this guy would do. He would take a shotgun, like a small shotgun. He would go out and just kill squirrels. Now, what the fuck did a squirrel do to you? Why would you go out and kill a squirrel? Ruby, say hi to everybody. She's doing very well. Thank you for asking. Why would somebody want to go out for entertainment and kill an animal? I just don't understand that. They have these people trophy hunters. And again, I always like to say, if I had a terminal illness that I knew I was going to die in, let's say 3 months, oh, the shit I'm going to do or would do. I think that some of those folks are deserving of the worst things that can ever come to a human. And anybody who abuses any kind of animal because they can, in my book, is the sickest of the sickest of the sickest. I don't know how you all feel about that, but you know, I would have no problem spending the last 90 days of my life in jail to rectify problems like that. But I don't wish anybody ill. I wish they wouldn't do those things, like people that pay $40,000 to go over and kill an endangered rhino or some shit. And again, I'm. This is all about nuance. I don't know if you know this, but President Putin from Russia, he shot an endangered tiger. He killed an endangered tiger in India on a trip. I think that's disgusting. I don't know how any human being can have the desire in their heart to do that. What the fuck did the animal do to you? Nothing is the answer. Yeah. So now Hannah made a comment here. This is an interesting comment. I want to share this with the audience. Again, I'm not selling you out, Hannah. I just mentioned your name because you're in the comments. But let's just say it wasn't Hannah. So she said soya, which is like soybeans. Farming is worse for the environment than meat farming, but animals is another story. I'm not sure what you mean by that, but um, put it this way: there are certain environments that are inhospitable to plant production. Like, for example, some of the hills in Scotland, they don't get the right amount of sunlight, and the terrain is very difficult to grow, vegetables. But they are good for grazing, like sheep or whatever. So that's what they do. But I disagree with the point. Now, again, it's all how it's done, right? So if you the modern plant production system for some of the standard crops like corn, soy, alfalfa, they're done with what's called monoculture, and that's a fancy word for saying they only grow one thing on a bunch of land for a long period of time. So it completely screws up the minerals in the soil. The soil isn't even soil anymore; it's just dirt. And the way they get around that is they buy petrochemical fertilizers, which have the nutrients, and they basically just spray it on the ground. They basically, it's like a liquid fertilizer, and that's how the plants get their nutrients. But it's terrible for the environment. So I agree with Han in that regard. Now, in the old days, when back in the 1700s, 1600s, they didn't have the luxury of petrochemical fertilizers. So what did they do? They did something called crop rotation. I'm sure most of us have heard about that. So you'd have soy on one field, you'd have alfalfa on the other. You might keep one fallow, and you're not going to grow it, and you let it recover, and then you just keep switching, and you always give it a season or two to catch up and get its minerals back, because the earth re-regulates itself if you don't overexploit it. And so healthy soil is a really important thing. All the little living organisms, it's like a little terrarium, and you need all those things, like all the bacteria, all the worms, etc. It makes the best soil, and it makes the healthiest plants with the right amount of nutrients. Now you add in, for modern monoculture agriculture, a lot of it's genetically modified, and what they do is they genetically modify the crops to not to be pest resistant. So, for example, if you have something that's thrips is a insect that eats a lot of crops. They might genetically modify something so that thrips can't survive, but it also tends to kill off other other insects. So it kills off everything. I'll give you an example. They have some grass, genetically modified grass seed now, that no insects can live on it. All the stuff that normally grows in weeds. In other words, if weeds can't grow, I'm sorry, it's an herbicide, and if you apply it, no, only grass will grow. All the weeds die, but it's toxic. So when it's like my dog's eating it right now, and they spray this shit where I live with this chemical stuff. It's like this chemicalized. It used to be called Chemlon, and now it's called True Green, which is of course a bullshit greenwashing term. Hey Ruby, stop eating the grass, please. And it's just like poison. I can't even, if you know what grounding is, when you come outside with your bare feet, you stand on the grass or the earth, and it's supposed to dissipate some of your electric energy. I can't do that where I live because they spray the ground with this disgusting chemical mix of bullshit. And it does make the grass grow and it does kill the weeds. So it looks visually pleasing, but it's poison. What the fuck is wrong with us? For the sake of a little bit of a prettier, this is the part I don't understand this, man. This is the part about human beings I just can't get. How can you forsake the health of the local community and just do it because it looks a little better? I mean, what is wrong with people? Doesn't make any sense to me. So yeah, so the pesticides and herbicides that are applied, which are all basically petrochemical derived, they're the problem. I mean, most of the food that us Americans eat is covered in these things. And the problem is it's not just on the outside of the fruit. Sometimes it is, but a lot of it's actually absorbed by the root system and into the fruit or into the vegetables. So no matter what you do to try to wash it off, you're getting the poison. And I think, listen, I'm 56. I think cancer rates are already they're going to start to really skyrocket because my generation has grown up eating this shit since the 70s. And that's when they started doing all this shit was 1970s. A little bit in the 60s, but it's become widespread. So you have genetically modified food, the destruction of soil based on monocrop agriculture, and the vast application of pesticides and herbicides. And all that is just one big toxic soup. So I was a part of this thing called the VA Farms program, and it was an organic farm where you learn natural pesticide application. You learned, all the things I talked about earlier to grow organic, healthy, ecologically sustainable. Now, it doesn't yield as much. And so when you have a for-profit company, all they want to do is get the yield and shelf stability so they can sell more of it. Well, it could be matey. I mean, I don't. Ruby just likes to nibble on it as a practice, so I don't think she has a stomach ache. But that could be the case too. I don't know for sure. She does. She and I are not on speaking terms, unfortunately. I wish we were. So listen, this is all the listen. We were talking about this a bit yesterday. There was a guy who came on. I think his name was what was his name? He was talking about eliminating money, and I think the bottom line is that the profit motive can be very problematic because it puts certain considerations, the short-term accumulation of money over the long-term benefit of the earth and of the community. And I think that's one of the things that has to change. The goal of enriching oneself is become like this very unhealthy focus. I think a lot of us realize this. It's not too complicated to figure that out. The question is, how do we get the people that are so motivated by it to not be motivated by that? Or how do we create regulation that has incentives or punishments that, I don't want to tell people what to do or have to control shit, but it seems like absent those controls, people just tend to be greedy and self-serving. And on a small scale, that doesn't work. People who are greedy and self-serving get cast out or unalived because you're harming the local. But somehow when we set up these larger, more complicated systems, there's a separation with institutions and economic systems that doesn't hold people accountable for their antisocial or their sociopathic behavior. And just to let you know, I was brought up to play the capitalist game as an entrepreneur. It's what I did most of my life. So, it's only in the last couple decades that I've realized how detrimental this is. The question is, how do we change? This whole thing is one big behemoth, a global interconnected economy of mostly capital return-seeking endeavors. And it just seems to have no limit as to what it will do to try to get return on investment. And again, getting back to factory farming, I find something like that ignores the public good. I mean, the healthcare industry is the best example in the United States. It is just a perfect example of how flawed this system is. Why does an executive at United Healthcare need to have a $25 million a year salary? And why do investors have to make 70% a year on investment when people can't even afford to get a medical procedure done? That to me makes no sense. That to me is so incredibly ass backwards. And I just don't, I don't know, how the hell did we get here? I mean, I know it didn't happen overnight, but Somehow, some way, we evolved to work together cooperatively to survive, and that was the only way we survived, and thankfully we did. But man, when I read Derek Jensen, for those who haven't read Derek Jensen, and this was the big change in my thinking. I read Derek Jensen probably in my early 30s, about 25 years ago. He's a deep green ecological thinker. Strange guy, but very good writer. And this is when I knew we were totally fucked, where I knew there was no chance to change this. I used to think things like solar panels and electric cars and all these techno solutions would kind of help us. That's a fool's errand. What happened was, and I talk about this a lot when it comes to money because this is wrapped into that, but when humans discovered agriculture, how to domesticate plants and animals, that was the beginning of the end. That was the beginning of the end. And why do I say that? Well, because before human beings organized into more hierarchical structures, we had small tribal type systems where you would live amongst maybe 1 or 200 people max. And in that small group, there was accountability, and there was also people spent their days pursuing calories, right? You would walk or run a certain distance to avoid predators. You would hunt or mostly gather. In fact, we should be called gatherer hunters, not the other way around. But what happened was when agriculture was discovered, the people who had access to the land or who became in control of food production, they started to hoard it, and they became the wealthier ownership class. So you had hierarchy where there wasn't one before. And that way, can you rise me? Uh, I think that's alternate terms for can I come up as a guest. What you have to do if you want to come up as a guest, you have to request. It's a little button, red and blue button in the bottom center, a little bit right of center. I can't just bring you up. Can't speak your name because it looks like it's in Arabic. But yeah, I'm happy to have a guest. So, but the point I'm trying to make is this is what Derek Jensen said that completely blew my mind because I always thought like, well, we have to be able to fix this shit, right? Because we started it, we should be able to correct it. Well, no, it's sort of like a runaway train, and the hierarchy that came out of the discovery and domestication of plants and animals has forever changed human existence. And why is that? Because the surplus of calories that came out of that was a complete change of the way the human experience and any other being. How many animals do you know? I mean, squirrels do this a little bit, but not one squirrel doesn't go out and take 80% of the nuts in a certain region and hide them from the other squirrels and have armed guards. They may collect some and literally squirrel them away for winter, but they do it to the extent of their needs, not for excessive accumulation. Well, that all changed with agriculture. So the hierarchy started getting formed, and then you had classes. You had the ownership class, and you had the peasants, and of course you have exploitation. And typically before, you could not have endless exploitation without accountability, and that all changed. And then, of course, the discovery of fossil fuels exploded everything with caloric production. And that's what's risen to where we are today. That's why the human population went from probably 700 million back in 1200, 1300 AD to 8 billion now in a span of 500-600 years, which is insane. So that's why we are where we are. And again, this is one big experiment, one big complex interconnected global economy with way more humans and way more exploitation of natural sources and a lot more hoarding with zero accountability because of the cleavages between the ownership class and the rest of folks. Now, of course, a lot of it through capitalism has yielded some prosperity that has been widespread, but the question is how long will that last? Several generations. And if you add in the fact that most of the energy that has come out of the dense, fossil fuels is just old sunlight. It's all microorganisms and plant matter that has been condensed down for tens, hundreds of millions of years, and it's being extracted at a rate, it's going to be extracted over the course of 400 years, and it took 400 million years to formulate. And when that changes, everything's going to unwind. And people are like, no, technology will save us. Technology will save us. No, it's not going to. We're not going to be an interplanetary species like Elon Musk has taught. It's complete bullshit. And the other thing is, we are not going to be able to maintain this way of life, even for the small number of humans now that enjoy it. There are those who believe we can if we just develop enough and that everything will be hunky-dory and life will be swell. It's not going to happen. We're going to run out of resources. There's not going to be some magic bullet. that's going to find a way to do all this stuff. I don't listen. These are all the people that I've studied that have looked at this very carefully. So I'm making broad statements. I guess anything's possible. But somebody was in the guest queue and they just dropped. So if you want to come back up, I'll bring you up. Somebody, Mady says Chip W3 will reset a lot of things. War is necessary. I don't know if that's the case. I know that war is an unfortunate phenomenon of human existence. But again, very, very rarely did war happen back when we were smaller numbers of people, unless certain resources were scarce in an area and people had to compete over resources, and then they would vie for those resources. But remember, that happens now. Whenever there's resource scarcity in nature, there's conflict and death. That's not an abnormal thing to exist. People who live on the moon, the poor people, nuclear war, it will only affect the. I'm not sure, Anthony, if you want to finish that statement. Yeah, and nuclear conflict is the big wild card right now, obviously. And the experiment that we're in the midst of will probably, from an ecological standpoint, break down absent, massive economic and/or war like circumstances. My guess is that the human population will probably go from 8.6 billion at its peak, maybe 9 billion if we're lucky, down to about 1.5 to 2 over the course of the next 300 years, and maybe a lot sooner. And that's an unimaginable amount of suffering, but it's not abnormal. If you look at any other natural phenomenon, whenever there's an explosion of population because of an excess availability of calories and a lack of predation and disease, this is what happens. It's very normal. And the humans have been incredibly adept at survival and expansion and, using their creativity and our massive brain to our benefit. But it's almost like we're so good at it that we're overdoing it, right? That we haven't been able to temper our creativity. It's very similar to what Israel's doing, I would say. They're arrogant, they're short-sighted, they're doing what they can because they can. There's no accountability, and therefore that's what the human experience typically is. It's very rare to find somebody who has power who doesn't yield it the way that we're seeing in Israel and the way we're seeing human society writ large yielding that power. And the more dominant Western cultures are pursuing more and more development, and the next big target is sub-Saharan Africa, no doubt. So we'll see. There may be a plan to try to thin some of this out, because I think the smartest people in the world are not dumb, and they know that some of these resources are not unlimited, and they may want to have more longevity for a smaller subset of people. So they may try to thin the herd, so to speak. That doesn't seem, it's disgusting to think about, but it doesn't seem like it's completely impractical. And that may be part of what we just saw 3 years ago. That could be part of it. I don't know. A lot of people have alleged that. Yeah, I wouldn't worry about gas guzzlers. I used to worry about that stuff. I think people that buy gas guzzlers are selfish pieces of shit, but that's beside the point, because it won't make much of a difference. The way that the commercial fleet works and the passenger fleet, they're a small dent in the problem. We mentioned animal agriculture. More emissions come out of the animal agriculture business than come out of all of the transportation combined. In carbon, we would stop eating animal products, or at least limit it drastically. That's why I read this one time, and there's a group called Earth First, which is sort of more radical arm that believes in going into like farms and liberating animals. They would go to like a fur farm and set loose a bunch of minks, just basically destroy They didn't unalive any humans. They just would either release animals or damage property or whatever. And they were very heavily tracked by the FBI because they were considered domestic terrorists. But one of the leaders of that group said on a website, he says, "You can't call yourself an environmentalist and still eat meat." And I'll never forget reading that. That was like a gut punch. Because at the time, I considered myself someone who was ecologically motivated. But then I realized that, damn, man, we just can't. There's a lot of stuff that we're used to doing that we just can't do if we're serious about taking care of the place. And the weird thing is, everything seems normal now. I talked about my friend Paul earlier, who had a heart attack and a stroke. And he seemed very normal for a long time. And then it kind of caught up. And I think that's what's going to happen with human society. It seems normal right now. The environment's, it's regional, of course, but Most of our environments seem kind of normal right now. Like we walk outside, and it just life seems normal. But we're seeing more flooding, more stronger storms. You know, we're seeing the ice caps are melting where people like in the Himalayas who normally had water for each season don't have it anymore because there's no more snowpack. So, and these things take time. It won't be like it won't be a light switch. Collapse, this is the other part about collapse that I learned about. Collapse isn't like an event or like a week or a month or even a year. It can take multiple decades or even centuries for a collapse to play out. But I believe that we're already in the early stages of ecological collapse, and economic collapse is definitely coming. And that's probably not too far away. And what we're seeing right now may be the first chapter of it. I mean, the amount of debt held by the individuals and held by governments especially is just out of control. If you haven't heard of a guy named Nate Hagens, Hagens, Nate Hagens, he's somebody I really recommend. He has a YouTube channel called The Great Simplification, and Nate's an interesting guy. He's a former Wall Street guy. He understands the economy stuff very well. He understands the ecological stuff because he went and got a degree in ecological economics. And I think he's an interesting thinker. And you know, we'll see. Nobody knows for sure what the future holds, right? It's hard to make predictions. But I do know one thing. We could be doing a hell of a lot better if we had, and again, I always talk about this. I think the number one problem that human beings have is that we think of ourselves differently. We think that we're somehow like better, that we're more worthy, that things on this earth, especially from a religious standpoint, should serve human beings. And I completely disagree with that. And I think until that mindset changes and is more pervasive, if you look at back at indigenous culture, they were much more respectful and reverent towards the world in which they occupied. And they still are, the ones that are still there. They take what they need, but they don't exploit more than what they need. Right? And something about that characteristic, that's the difference between somebody who hunts for subsistence and somebody who trophy hunts for their big fat ego. Right? So I think that's the mindset. I think everything comes down to mindset. We started talking earlier today about, personal challenges and, you know, personal struggles and stuff like that. And we all go through them. And I think our mindset is what determines our behavior and our actions, which then determines the outcomes that we go through. And not everything's within our control. Most stuff isn't. But there are things that is. I mean, for example, this is one that people talk about. I think most people who are successful tend to get up earlier. And so I always like to say, one thing I can do is I can choose when I'm going to bed. I can choose when I'm going to get up. I can try to control the things I think. And I very rarely do a good job of all this stuff. I'm very inconsistent. So one of my goals going forward is to get much more judicious with the time that I have left. And I'm going to be on social media a lot less. I've kind of realized that it's fun. It's interesting to have these conversations and to listen to other people do it and to make videos or watch videos. But there's also a downside to it. I think it's bad for our brains in too high a quantity. So it's for me, I want to do an experiment. I'm going to try to go a little bit without and see if that makes a difference, but then I might go cold turkey for a while to see how that feels. I don't know if anybody ever thought about that, but I'm on this damn phone so damn much, man. My hand actually has like, but yeah, the mindset I think is the most important thing. And I think we're amazingly capable of doing great good and also great harm. And neither is like our natural state of being. It's all about the environment in which we find ourselves and the culture that reinforces and incentivizes one versus the other. I'm not going to go away forever. I mean, what I'll probably do is have a live here and there when I kind of feel up to it. But I think for mental health, I think, we all have to kind of do what's right for our mental health. So now I'm not going to go away entirely. I'm just going to give it a go. Plus, remember, TikTok might go away. We may have no choice in the matter, right? It may come in the next 3 or 4 months. TikTok might go away. So I appreciate the people who support me. But the good news is there are so many good content creators. The other thing I was going to say today, I don't know if you feel this way, but there's so much content out there now. I mean, there's all these really good political thinkers, other content. Uh, there's just so much we can consume, and it's almost like overwhelming. There are podcasts, there's YouTube videos, there's live videos here on TikTok, scrollable stuff. It's just so much stuff you can choose from. It's like it's kind of overwhelming, right? So anyway, it's a really beautiful day here. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go and enjoy some of it. I just wanted to get on today. I was a little late getting started, so I'm sorry about that. But we'll talk some more. One thing I'm trying to do, just to let you know, is I've met some people here on TikTok, a lot of whom I disagree with, which is fine. I'm reaching out to them and asking them if they want to do like one-on-one or maybe small Zoom kind of conversations, and then record those, and then either take pieces out of them or put the whole thing up on Rumble or YouTube. That I'm trying to do. So anyway, everybody, I'm gonna close it out for right now. Thanks for being here. For those of you who missed any of this, this is a very different live. We talked about a lot of stuff that's way different. So if you want to review it, the episode will be up sometime tonight on my YouTube and Rumble channels. There's a link in my bio that says Linktree. Click on that and you'll find it. Anyway, so I appreciate everybody being here and see what happens next. Have a good rest of your day.